dark brown hair surmounted by a torn straw hat. Miss Pinsent pronounced her name Enning. The child looked up from her dandling and patting, and after a stare of which the blankness was somewhat exaggerated, replied, "Law, no, Miss Pinson, I never see him." "Aren't you always messing around with him, you naughty little girl?" the dressmaker returned with sharpness. "Isn't he round the corner playing marbles or some jumping game?" Miss Pinsent went on, trying to be suggestive. "I assure you he never plays nothing," said Millicent Henning, with a mature manner which she bore out by adding, "and I don't know why I should be called naughty, neither." "Well, if you want to be called good, please go and find him, and tell him there's a lady here come on purpose to see him this very instant." Miss Pinsent waited a moment to see if her injunction would be obeyed, but she got no satisfaction beyond another gaze of deliberation, which made her feel that the child's perversity was as great as the beauty, somewhat soiled and dimmed, of her insolent little face. She turned back into the house with an exclamation of despair, and as soon as she had disappeared, Millicent Henning sprang erect and began to race down the street in the direction of another which crossed it. I take no unfair advantage of the innocence of childhood in saying that the motive of this young lady's flight was not a desire to be agreeable to Miss Pinsent, but an extreme curiosity on the subject of the visitor who wanted to see Hyacinth Robinson. She wished to participate, if only in imagination, in the interview that might take place, and she was moved also by a quick revival of friendly feeling for the boy, from whom she had parted only half an hour before with considerable asperity. She was not a very clinging little creature, and there was no one in her own domestic circle to whom she was much attached. But she liked to kiss Hyacinth when he didn't push her away and tell her she was tiresome. It was in this action and epithet he had indulged half an hour ago, but she had reflected rapidly, while she stared at Miss Pinsent, that this was the worst he had ever done. Millicent Henning was only 8 years of age, but she knew there was worse in the world than that. Mrs. Bowerbank, in a leisurely roundabout way, wandered off to her sister, Mrs. Chipperfield, whom she had come into that part of the world to see, and the whole history of the dropsical tendencies of whose husband, an undertaker with a business that had been a blessing because you could always count on it, she unfolded to Miss Pinsent between the sips of a second glass. She was a high-shouldered, towering woman, and suggested squareness as well as a pervasion of the upper air, so that Amanda reflected that she must be very difficult to fit, and had a sinking at the idea of the number of pins she would take. Her sister had 9 children, and she herself had 7, the eldest of whom she left in charge of the others when she went to her service. She was on duty at the prison only during the day. She had to be there at 7 in the morning, but she got her evenings at home, quite regular and comfortable. Miss Pinsent thought it wonderful she could talk of comfort in such a life as that, but could easily imagine she should be glad to get away at night, for at that time the place must be much more terrible. "And aren't you frightened of them, ever?" she inquired, looking up at her visitor with her little heated face. Mrs. Bowerbank was very slow, and considered her long before replying that she felt herself to be, in an alarming degree, in the eye of the law, for who could be more closely connected with the administration of justice than a female turnkey, especially so big and majestic a one? "I expect they are more frightened of me," she replied at last, and it was an idea into which Miss Pinsent could easily enter. "And at night I suppose they rave quite awful," the little dressmaker suggested, feeling vaguely that prisons and madhouses came to very much the same. "Well, if they do, we hush 'em up," Mrs. Bowerbank remarked, rather portentously, while Miss Pinsent fidgeted to the door again without results, to see if the child had become visible. She observed to her guest that she couldn't call it anything but contrary that he should not turn up, when he knew so well, most days in the week, when his tea was ready. To which Mrs. Bowerbank rejoined, fixing her companion again with the steady orb of justice, "And do we have his tea that way by himself, like a little gentleman?" "Well, I try to give it to him tidy-like at a suitable hour," said Miss Pinsent guiltily. "And there might be some who would say that, for the matter of that, he is a little gentleman," she added.